The lights in the room were dim. Lisa Martinez sat in her chair and looked across the metal table at the alien. His name was Zekthara. He was big, much bigger than any human. His skin was dark blue and covered with old scars. 4 arms hung from his shoulders. 2 of them shook all the time now. Lisa had been a war reporter for 15 years. She had seen many battles and talked to many soldiers. But she had never talked to one of them before. One of the aliens who fought against humans in the war that ended 3 years ago. The room was on Meridian 7, a space station that belonged to no one. It was neutral ground. Both humans and aliens could come here safely. The war was over, but trust was still hard to find. Zekthara moved in his chair. It was too small for him. His lower arms rested on the table. His upper arms crossed over his chest. Lisa could see the translator device clipped to his collar. It would change his words into English. Her translator would change her words into his language. "You said you would tell me about the war," Lisa said. She kept her voice calm and quiet. "About fighting humans." The alien's eyes were yellow. They looked tired, very tired. He had been a commander in the Krillian Empire forces. He had fought humans for 4 long years. Now he was free to go home, but he had not left yet. "Your people do not understand what you are," Zekthara said. His voice was deep and rough. The translator made it sound flat. "We thought we knew. We were wrong." Lisa turned on her recording device. "Tell me what you thought about humans before the war started." Zekthara made a sound that might have been a laugh, but it did not sound happy. "We thought you were children. New to space, weak, your ships were small. Your weapons were simple, your colonies were few." He stopped talking and looked at his shaking hands. "The High Command said the war would last 6 months, maybe less. Humans would see our power and surrender. Then they would serve the Empire like other species do." "But that did not happen," Lisa said. "No, that did not happen." Zekthara's yellow eyes met hers. "The first battle was at Kepler Station, your outer colony. We sent 3 battle groups, 15 ships. You had 5 old fighters and a mining station." Lisa knew about Kepler Station. Every human did. It was where the war really began, where Captain Roy Adams made his choice. "Captain Adams could have surrendered," Zekthara continued. "His ships were nothing against ours. But he did not ask for terms. He did not try to run. He attacked." The alien's voice got quieter. 5 small ships attacked 15 large ones. They knew they would die. They attacked anyway. Adams rammed his fighter into our command ship. His people followed him. All of them died. Lisa had heard this story before, but hearing it from the other side made it different. "What did you think when that happened?" "I thought they were crazy. Stupid. Why die for nothing? Why not live and serve the Empire? Other species understand this. They fight until they cannot. Then they surrender. This is normal." Zekthara lifted one of his upper hands and touched a scar on his neck. But Captain Adams did not surrender. His people did not surrender. They chose to die fighting instead of live serving. This was not normal. "Did you report this to your commanders?" "Yes, they said Adams was unusual, a crazy human. Most humans would be normal. Most would surrender when they saw our power." Zekthara's translator made a clicking sound. "They were wrong about this too." Lisa leaned forward. "What happened next?" "We moved to the next system. Tau Ceti, bigger colonies there. More ships. We thought there would be a real battle this time. Then surrender." The alien stood up from his chair. He was very tall. His head almost touched the ceiling. He walked to the small window and looked out at space. "Admiral Jake Morrison commanded your fleet there. Good ships, good weapons, but still fewer than ours. Still smaller. The battle should have been easy." Lisa waited. She could see that remembering was hard for him. Morrison split his fleet. Half attacked our front ships. The other half went around. Normal tactics. We started to win the front battle. Then the other half attacked our rear ships. Zekthara turned back to face her. But they did not just attack. They rammed. Again, ship after ship, they turned their vessels into weapons. Morrison's own ship, the Defender, rammed our flagship. He died in the explosion. The Krillians won that battle, Lisa said. She knew the history. Yes, we won. We controlled the system. But winning felt wrong. Your people fought like they did not care about dying. Like death was just another weapon to use against us. The alien sat down again. His shaking was worse. Now other species fight to live. Humans seem to fight to die, but they made sure their deaths hurt us. Lisa made notes on her tablet. How did the other Krillian soldiers react to this? They were confused, scared. In our military training, we learn about many kinds of enemies. Fast enemies, strong enemies, smart enemies. But we never learned about enemies who wanted to die. Zekthara looked at his hands again. After Talseti, the High Command changed their plans. 6 months became 1 year, then 2 years. They said humans would run out of ships. Run out of people, but humans kept fighting. They always kept fighting. Tell me about the ground battles, Lisa said. The alien was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was very soft. Ground battles were worse. In space, humans died quickly. On planets, they died slowly, but they never stopped. He stood up again and walked around the small room. I was at New Texas Colony. My unit landed there to take control. The colonists should have surrendered. They were farmers and miners, not soldiers. But they fought us in every building, every street. Lisa had been to New Texas after the war. She had seen the rebuilt cities. But she had also seen the old battle sites, places where the ground was still black from the fighting. There was a human teacher there, Zekthara said. Helen Brooks, she organized the civilians, turned them into fighters. Used children as messengers, old people as spotters, everyone fought. How long did it take to control the colony? 4 months. 4 months to defeat farmers and teachers and children. The alien's voice was full of pain. We lost 2,000 soldiers. They lost everyone. But they made us pay for every building, every room. Zekthara sat down hard in his chair. The metal creaked under his weight. That was when I started to understand. Humans do not fight for territory. They do not fight for resources. They fight. Because fighting is what humans do. It is part of what you are. Lisa looked at her notes. The interview had been going for an hour, but she felt like they had just started. Is that what you want other species to know about humans? I want them to know the truth, Zekthara said. The war is over. But humans are still humans. You still have that thing inside you. That need to fight when you are threatened. Other species should remember this. The alien looked tired, very tired. But he was not done talking yet. Lisa could see that there was much more to tell. Much more that had happened in those 4 years of war, much more about what it meant to fight against humans. Tomorrow we will talk more, Lisa said, about what happened as the war continued. Zekthara nodded. Yes, tomorrow I will tell you about the escalation, about how humans became something we never expected, something that changed how we think about war itself. The lights in the room seemed dimmer now. Lisa turned off her recorder and gathered her notes, but she knew she would not sleep well tonight. The alien's words would stay with her. The truth about what humans really were would keep her awake. Lisa arrived at the meeting room early the next day. Zekthara was already there. He sat in the same chair, staring out the window at the stars. His forearms were still. For the first time since she met him, he was not shaking. You slept? Lisa. Asta, she sat down. Krillians do not sleep like humans do. We rest differently. Zekthara turned to look at her. But I did not rest well. Talking about the war brings back memories I try to forget. Lisa turned on her recorder. Yesterday you told me about the early battles, about how humans fought differently than your people expected. Yes, but those were just the beginning. What came next was worse, much worse. The alien's yellow eyes looked distant. 6 months into the war, we faced Admiral Jake Morrison again, this time at the Proxima system. Zekthara stood up and began to pace around the small room. Morrison had learned from the earlier battles. His ships were better organized. His tactics were different. But they were still human tactics. What made them different? He divided his fleet into small groups. Each group attacked from a different direction, normal strategy. But when our ships moved to fight one group, that group would not retreat. They would fight until they were destroyed. This kept our ships busy while the other groups attacked our weak points. Lisa made notes on her tablet. That sounds like good military strategy. It was good strategy. But it required his people to die on command, to stay and fight when any reasonable being would run away. Zekthara stopped pacing and looked at her. In Krillian military doctrine, you retreat when you cannot win. You save your ships and soldiers for the next battle. Humans do not do this. The alien sat down again. His hands began to shake slightly. Captain Amy Rodriguez was in charge of one of Morrison's groups. Her ship was badly damaged. Her weapons were failing. Any other captain would have retreated. Instead, she ordered her crew to board our flagship. Board an enemy ship with a damaged vessel? Yes, they used their ship's last power to get close. Then they cut through our hull with emergency tools. 50 humans entered a ship with 500 Krillians on board. Zekthara's voice became quieter. Rodriguez and her people fought room by room through our ship. They had no energy weapons, just metal tools and explosives. They knew they could not win. They knew they would all die. But they kept fighting. Lisa looked up from her notes. What happened to them? They all died. But before they died, they destroyed our main power systems, our command center, our life support controls. We had to abandon the ship. The alien's upper arms crossed over his chest. One damaged human ship with 50 people destroyed our most powerful vessel. How did the other Krillian soldiers react to this? They were terrified, not of dying. Krillians are brave. We do not fear death in battle. But we fear waste, meaningless death. What Rodriguez did seemed meaningless to us. Zekthara looked out the window again. But it was not meaningless. While we were fighting Rodriguez and her people, the other human groups destroyed 6 more of our ships. Morrison used the sacrifice of 50 people to save thousands of human lives. Lisa tried to imagine the scene. 50 humans fighting through an alien ship, knowing they would die. Did this change how your commanders planned battles? They tried to change. They spread our ships out more. They kept reserves ready to help. Damaged vessels, but humans adapted too. They adapted faster than we did. The alien stood up again and walked to the corner of the room. 3 months later, we attacked the human colony ship New Denver. It was not a military ship. Just families trying to find a new home. We expected them to surrender immediately. But they didn't. No, they had a teacher with them, Helen Brooks. She had organized the colonists before we arrived. Every person on that ship had a job in their defense plan. Zekthara's voice became harder. Children carried messages between sections of the ship. Old people watched for our soldiers and reported their movements. Adults built traps and barriers. Everyone fought. Lisa had heard about colony ship battles during the war. They were always brutal. How long did it take to control the ship? 2 weeks. The ship had 3,000 people on it. We had 500 soldiers. It should have been easy. But Brooks had turned every corridor into a battlefield. Every room into a trap. The alien sat down heavily. We would clear a section and move on. Then the civilians would come back and attack us from behind. We could not guard everything. We could not fight everywhere at once. What made it so difficult? Humans fight with everything they have, not just weapons. They use their knowledge, their creativity, their willingness to sacrifice. Zekthara looked at his shaking hands. Brooks was a teacher. She taught children about history and literature. But she used that knowledge to fight us. Lisa waited for him to continue. She knew how other species had fought similar battles. She studied our tactics from previous engagements. She taught the colonists to think like soldiers while still being civilians. The alien's voice was full of respect and fear. A teacher with no military training created a defense that stopped trained Krillian soldiers for 2 weeks. She used maintenance tunnels like military trenches. She turned the ship's own systems into weapons. What happened to her? She died in the final assault. But even then, she was still teaching, still organizing, still fighting. Zekthara looked up at Lisa. When we found her body, she was holding a datapad. On it were instructions for the survivors. Plans for continuing the resistance even after she was gone. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. Did the survivors follow her plans? Some tried to. But by then, most of the colonists were dead. The ship was ours. But controlling, it felt like losing. We had used 500 soldiers in 2 weeks to defeat 3,000 civilians. The cost was too high. Zekthara stood up and walked back to the window. That was when our commanders realized something important. Humans do not become weaker. When they are desperate, they become more dangerous. How so? Other species panic when they are losing. They make mistakes. They give up. Humans do the opposite. When they are losing, they fight harder. They become more creative, more willing to take risks. The alien turned back to face her. After New Denver, the High Command changed their strategy again. They decided to avoid civilian targets, to focus only on military ships and bases. Lisa made more notes. Did that work better? No, it was worse. Military humans were even more dangerous than civilian humans. They had training, they had better weapons, and they had the same willingness to die that all humans seem to have. Zekthara sat down one more time. His shaking was worse now. The next battle was at Fort Liberty, a human military base. We thought it would be easier because we were fighting soldiers instead of families. We were wrong again. What made it different? Soldiers understand war. They know when they are beaten. They should surrender when continuing to fight is pointless. The alien's yellow eyes met hers. Human soldiers do not think this way. They fight until they are dead. Not until they are defeated, until they are dead. Lisa looked at her recorder. The session had been going for over an hour. But she could see that Zekthara had more to tell, much more. Tomorrow we will talk about Fort Liberty, she said. About what happened when your people fought human soldiers. Yes, Zekthara said quietly. Tomorrow I will tell you about Major Lisa-Chun, about how one human officer changed the way we thought about war itself. About how humans showed us that victory and defeat mean different things to different species. The alien looked tired again, very tired. But there was something else in his expression now. Something that looked like respect, or maybe fear. Lisa was not sure which one it was. The third day of interviews began like the others. Lisa sat across from Zekthara in the small room on Meridian 7, but today the alien looked different. His yellow eyes were darker. His shaking was worse. Are you ready to continue? Lisa asked. I am not sure anyone can be ready to talk about Fort Liberty, Zekthara said. But I will try. Lisa turned on her recorder. You mentioned Major Lisa-Chun yesterday. Yes, Chun was the commanding officer at Fort Liberty when we attacked. She had been fighting us for 2 years by then. She knew our methods, our weaknesses. The alien paused, but we thought we knew her methods too. We were wrong. Zekthara stood up and walked to the window. Outside, ships moved between the space station's docking arms. Human ships and alien ships, side by side now. The war was over, but the memory of it filled the room. Fort Liberty was built into an asteroid, very strong defenses. But we had new weapons, better ships. The High Command was confident we would win quickly. What happened? The siege lasted 8 months. Zekthara's voice was flat. 8 months. We cut off all supply routes to the base. No food, no water. No fresh air. The humans should have surrendered after 2 weeks. Lisa made notes on her tablet, but they didn't. No, they kept fighting, but that was not the strangest part. The alien turned back to face her. The strangest part was how they fought. Major Chun did things that made no sense to us. Zekthara sat down and leaned forward. In the second month of the siege, Chun started broadcasting messages to our ships, personal messages. She talked about our families back on the Krillian home. Worlds, she knew our names, our histories. How did she know these things? We did not understand at first. Then we realized she had been studying us. Not just our military tactics. She was studying us as people, as individuals. The alien's hands shook more violently. June would call my ship directly. She would ask about my mate and children. She knew their names. She knew where they lived. She would tell me about the weather on my homeworld. About news from my city. Lisa looked up from her notes. That sounds like psychological warfare. Yes, but it was more than that. June was not trying to make us afraid. She was trying to make us think of home, to make us homesick. To make us wonder why we were fighting so far from the people we loved. Zekthara's voice became quieter. Other human commanders would insult us, threaten us, try to make us angry. June did the opposite. She was kind, friendly. She talked to us like we were neighbors, not enemies. Did it work? It worked too well. My soldiers started looking forward to her messages. They would gather around the communication systems to listen to her talk about home. Some of them started talking back to her. The alien stood up again and began pacing. This was very dangerous for Krillian morale. Soldiers who think about home. Too much do not fight as well. They become careful. They try to stay alive instead of winning battles. Lisa tried to understand what this meant. So Chun was weakening your forces without fighting them directly. Yes, but she was also fighting U.S. directly. While she talked to us about our families, her soldiers were attacking our positions. Every day, every night, they never stopped. Zekthara stopped pacing and looked at her. The attacks were not random. They were planned perfectly. Chun seemed to know exactly when and where we would be weakest. She knew our patrol schedules, our supply routes, our command structure. She had spies? No, that is what we thought at first. But we checked. No spies, no traitors. Chun was just very good at understanding how we think, how we make decisions. The alien sat down again. In the 4th month, we captured one of her officers, Lieutenant Commander Beth Williams. We interrogated her, asked her how Chun knew so much about us. Lisa waited for him to continue. Williams told us about Dr. Kevin Chang, a human scientist who studied alien psychology. Before the war, Chang had worked with diplomatic missions. He had met many Krillians, learned how our minds work. Zekthara's voice became harder. When the war started, Chang joined Chun's staff. He taught her and her officers to think like Krillians, to predict what we would do before we did it. So humans were using psychology as a weapon. Yes, but not just against our minds, against our souls. The alien looked at his shaking hands. Chang had discovered something about Krillians that we did not know about ourselves. He found that we fight differently when we are away from home for too long. Lisa made more notes. This was something she had never heard before. Krillians are social creatures. We need contact with our families, our communities. When we are isolated for too long, we become depressed, anxious. Chang taught Chun to use this against us. Zekthara stood up and walked to the corner of the room. Chun would time her attacks for when our morale was lowest. She would increase her friendly broadcasts when our soldiers were most homesick. She turned our own nature against us. Did your commanders know about this? They learned eventually. They tried to counter it. They sent messages from home. They rotated troops more often. But Chun adapted to everything we did. She was always one step ahead. The alien's voice was full of respect and fear. In the 6th month, Chun started using our captured soldiers in her broadcasts. Not as prisoners, as guests. She would have them talk about their homes, their families, their hopes for after the war. Lisa felt a chill. What effect did this have? It made the war feel personal. Not just a conflict between empires, but a tragedy affecting real people with real families. Many of my soldiers started questioning why we were fighting. What we hoped to gain? Zekthara sat down heavily. This was the worst thing Chun could have done to us. Krillian soldiers are trained to follow orders without question, to fight for the empire without thinking about personal costs. Chun made us think about personal costs. Did this affect you too? Yes, I started dreaming about my mate and children. I started counting the days since I had seen them. I started wondering if the war was worth being away from them for so long. The alien looked out the window again. But Chin was not finished with us. In the 7th month, she did something that broke many of my soldiers completely. Lisa leaned forward. What did she do? She started sending gifts to our families back home. Medical supplies, food, toys for our children. She used captured Krillian supply ships to deliver them. Zekthara's voice was barely above a whisper. The gifts came with messages. Chun would write personal notes to our mates and children. She would tell them that their loved ones were fighting bravely, that they were missed, that everyone hoped the war would end soon so families could be together again. Lisa tried to imagine the impact of this. Your families were receiving gifts. From the enemy? Yes, and they were grateful. My own mate sent me a message thanking the humans for the medical supplies that saved our youngest child's life. The alien's eyes were wet now. How do you fight someone who saves your child? Well, you're trying to kill them? The silence in the room was heavy. Lisa could see that remembering this was very painful for Zekthara. The siege ended in the 8th month, he said finally. Not because we won, because we gave up. Half of my soldiers refused to continue fighting. They wanted to go home. They wanted to see their families. What happened to Major Chun? She survived. When we finally retreated, she sent us one last message. She thanked us for the interesting conversations. She hoped we would all see our families soon. She wished us well. Zekthara stood up and walked back to the window. That was when I realized the truth about humans. They do not just fight to win battles. They fight to change their enemies, to make them think differently about war itself. Lisa looked at her notes. The session had revealed something she had never expected. Humans using kindness as a weapon, using compassion as a military strategy. Tomorrow I will tell you about the final battles, Zekthara said, about how humans showed us that winning and losing are not what we thought they were, about how they convinced an entire empire to stop fighting without defeating us in battle. The alien looked tired and sad, but there was something else in his expression now, something that looked like understanding or maybe gratitude. Lisa was beginning to think they might be the same thing. Lisa could see that Zekthara was struggling. The alien sat hunched in his chair, all 4 arms wrapped around his body. His yellow eyes stared at the floor. The shaking in his hands had spread to his shoulders. We don't have to continue today. Lisa said gently, No, I need to finish this. I need to tell someone what really happened. Zekthara looked up at her. What I'm about to tell you is the reason the war ended. It is the reason my people fear humans now. Lisa turned on her recorder. Take your time. The final year of the war was different. Both sides were desperate. The Krillian Empire had lost many ships and soldiers. But humans had lost more, much more. The alien's voice was steady but quiet. The High Command decided to use our most powerful weapons, our elite forces. They sent my regiment to attack Earth itself. Lisa felt her heart skip. You attacked Earth? We tried to, but we never reached your homeworld. We were stopped at the outer defense stations. A place called Crimson Nebula. Zekthara stood up slowly. That is where I met the human who changed everything. The alien walked to the window and pressed one hand against the glass. Her name was Major Lisa Chun, the same officer from Fort Liberty. She had been promoted after that siege, given command of the defense fleet at Crimson Nebula. The same person who used psychological warfare against you? Yes, but this time was different. This time she was not trying to make us homesick or guilty. This time she was trying to save her people's homeworld. Zekthara turned back to face Lisa, and she was willing to do anything to stop us. The alien sat down again. His shaking was worse now. The battle at Crimson Nebula lasted 3 days. We had our best ships, our most experienced crews. Chun had older vessels and fewer soldiers, but she had something we could not match. What was that? Desperation. Human desperation is different from other kinds of desperation. When most species become desperate, they panic. They make mistakes, they give up hope. Zekthara looked directly at Lisa. When humans become desperate, they become more dangerous than ever. Lisa waited for him to continue. Jun's tactics at Crimson Nebula were brilliant, but they were also terrible. She sacrificed entire squadrons to damage single enemy ships. She ordered pilots to ram their fighters into our engines. She turned every piece of space debris into a weapon. The alien's voice became quieter. But the worst part was not the tactics. It was the attitude of her people. They were not angry at us. They were not afraid. They were calm, professional, like destroying themselves to hurt us was just part of their job. Zekthara stood up and began pacing again. On the second day of the battle, I watched a human sergeant named Danny Adams hold a position by himself. For 14 hours, his squad was dead. His weapons were failing. His position had no strategic value anymore. Why didn't he retreat? I asked him that myself. During a brief ceasefire, I sent a message to his position. I told him he could surrender, that his fight was meaningless, that continuing would only get him killed. The alien stopped pacing and looked at Lisa. Adams sent back a simple message. He said he was buying time for civilian transports to escape from a nearby station. He said every minute he held his position meant more families would reach safety. Lisa made notes on her tablet. What happened to him? After 14 hours of fighting against impossible odds, he finally ran out of ammunition. But he kept fighting with maintenance tools, with pieces of broken equipment, with his bare hands when everything else was gone. Zekthara's voice was full of respect and horror. When my soldiers finally overran his position, Adams was still alive. Barely, he was covered in wounds, dying from blood loss. But he was still trying to fight, still trying to buy one more minute for those civilian ships. The alien sat down heavily. I went to see him before he died. I wanted to understand why he had fought so hard for nothing. Why he had thrown his life away for people he did not even know. What did he tell you? He smiled at me, actually smiled. Then he said something I will never forget. He said that every human life was worth protecting, that dying to save strangers was not a sacrifice. It was just what humans do for each other. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. And then he died? Yes, but his death was not the end of it. While Adams was fighting alone, Chen had been preparing her final strategy, something that made Adam's sacrifice look small. Zekthara's hands shook violently now. Chen gathered all her remaining ships around the main Krillian fleet. Then she activated something called the Newman Protocol. Lisa had never heard of the Newman Protocol. What was that? A human military strategy for desperate situations. Chen turned her entire fleet into guided missiles, every ship, every fighter, every supply vessel, all aimed at our command ships. The alien stood up and walked to the corner of the room. But she did not just order her people to ram us. She asked for volunteers. She explained exactly what would happen, that everyone would die, that there was no chance of survival. Did anyone refuse? No one, not a single human refused. Pilots with families, young soldiers on their first mission, veterans who had fought for years, all of them volunteered to die. Zekthara's voice was barely a whisper. They formed up, in perfect formation, and flew straight at our ships, singing. Lisa looked up from her notes. Singing? Human battle songs. Old songs about heroes and sacrifice. They sang as they died. They sang as they destroyed our fleet. They sang as they saved their homeworld. The silence in the room was complete. Lisa could hear her own heartbeat. Chun's ship was the last to impact. She rammed the flagship personally. But before she died, she sent one final message to the surviving Krillian ships. What did she say? She thanked us for fighting honorably. She said she was sorry so many had to die on both sides. Then she said something that ended the war. Zekthara looked directly at Lisa. She said that humans would never stop fighting for their families, that we could destroy every human ship and every human world, but the ones who survived would keep fighting until the last Krillian was dead. The alien walked back to his chair but did not sit down. After Sheen's fleet was destroyed, my regiment had enough ships left to reach Earth. We could have attacked your homeworld, but we did not. Why? Because we finally understood what we were fighting, Chung was right. Humans would never surrender. Even if we conquered Earth, even if we enslaved every human in the galaxy, somewhere there would be humans planning to kill us, planning to free their people, planning to fight until they won or until they were all dead. Zekthara sat down slowly. The High Command called off the attack. They opened peace negotiations instead, because they realized that winning against humans was impossible. Not because humans could not be defeated, but because defeating humans would require destroying them completely. And that would make us monsters. Lisa looked at her notes. The story was almost over, but she could see there was still more. Tomorrow I will tell you about the peace talks, Zekthara said. About how humans negotiated even after losing so much. About how they showed mercy to the people who had tried to destroy them. About how they proved that their greatest strength was not their willingness to die, but their ability to forgive. The alien looked out the window one more time. Tomorrow, I will tell you why I am not afraid of humans anymore, and why every other species in the galaxy should be. On the 5th day, Lisa found Zekthara standing by the window when she arrived. He was perfectly still. His hands were not shaking anymore. He looked different, calmer, like telling his story had changed something inside him. This is our last session, Lisa said as she sat down. Yes, today I will tell you the truth that ended the war. The truth about what humans really are. Zekthara turned from the window and sat across from her. Are you ready to hear it? Lisa turned on her recorder. I'm ready. After the battle at Crimson Nebula, the Krillian High Command called for peace talks. They sent their best diplomats to meet with human representatives. I was there as a military advisor. The alien folded his forearms across his chest. We expected the humans to be angry, demanding we had attacked their colonies, killed their people, tried to reach their homeworld. Any other species would have wanted revenge, but humans didn't. The human diplomat was named Margaret Stone. She was older. Gray hair, tired eyes. She had lost 2 sons in the war. But when she spoke to us, there was no anger in her voice, no hatred. Zekthara looked directly at Lisa. Stone's first words to us were an apology. She said she was sorry so many Krillians had died. She said the war should never have happened. She asked about our families back home. Lisa made notes on her tablet. That seems like a strange way to start peace negotiations. It was exactly what we did not expect. Our diplomats had prepared for demands, for punishment, for humiliation. They were not prepared for sympathy. The alien stood up and walked to the center of the room. Stone explained the human position. Very simply. She said humans did not want to be enemies with anyone. They just wanted to live in peace. But if anyone tried to destroy them, they would fight until that threat was gone. Did she threaten the Krillian Empire? No, that was the strange part. She did not threaten us. She warned us. Like a friend warning another friend about danger, Zekthara paused. She said that humans had learned something about themselves during the war, something they had not known before. Lisa looked up from her notes. What was that? That humans could not be conquered. Not because they were too strong or too smart, but because they would never accept defeat as permanent. Stone said that even if every human world was destroyed, the survivors would spend their entire lives planning to get their freedom back. The alien walked back to his chair and sat down. She said this was not a threat. It was just a fact about human nature. Like saying that water is wet or that stars give light. Humans fight until they win or until they are all dead. How did the Krillian diplomats respond to this? They were confused at first. Stone was telling us we could not win, but she was also offering us peace. She was giving us a way to end the war without losing face. Zekthara's voice became softer. Stone proposed a simple agreement. Krillians would leave human space alone. Humans would leave Krillian space alone. Both species would trade and cooperate when possible. Both would avoid conflict when possible. That sounds reasonable. It was more than reasonable. It was generous. Humans were offering us everything we had wanted before the war started. Territory, independence, respect, but they were also making it clear that attacking them, again would be pointless. The alien looked out the window at the ships moving between the docking arms. Stone explained why humans fought the way they did. She said that for humans, survival is not just about staying alive. It is about protecting their way of life, their families, their freedom to choose their own path. Lisa tried to understand what this meant. So humans fight for ideas, not just territory? Yes, but more than that. They fight because fighting for those ideas is part of what makes them human. Stone said that asking humans not to fight for their freedom would be like asking them to stop being human. Zekthara stood up again and began pacing slowly. The most important thing Stone told us was about human forgiveness. She said that humans could forgive their enemies, but they would never forget the lessons they learned from fighting them. What lessons? That the universe is dangerous. That peaceful species must be ready to fight to stay peaceful. That showing mercy to enemies is important, but being too weak to defend yourself is stupid. The alien stopped pacing and looked at Lisa. Stone said that humans had always known they might have to fight for their survival someday. The war with the Earth just proved they were right to prepare for it. Lisa made more notes. Did the Krillian Empire accept these terms? They had no choice. Stone made it clear that these were not negotiations. They were explanations. Humans were telling us what they would do, not asking us what we wanted them to do. Zekthara sat down one final time. But Stone also made us an offer. She said that if Krillians ever faced a threat they could not handle alone, humans would help them. Because peace was better than war for everyone. Even after everything that had happened? Yes, Stone said that humans understood why. The war had started. Krillians were expanding their empire and humans were in the way. That was natural, normal, but now both species knew what fighting each other cost. So both species should choose not to do it again. The alien looked at his hands. They were completely steady now? The peace treaty was signed 3 days later. But the real end of the war came when Stone did something no one expected. What did she do? She invited Krillian families to visit human worlds. She said that if our people met each other as neighbors instead of enemies, future wars would be harder to start. Lisa felt tears in her eyes. Did any Krillian families accept? Many did, including mine. My mate and children visited Earth 6 months after the treaty was signed. They met human families who had lost people in the war. They shared meals together, played together, became friends. Zekthara's voice was full of wonder. My children learned human games. Human children learned Krillian songs. The adults talked about their hopes for the future. No one talked about the war except to say they were glad it was over. The alien looked directly at Lisa. That is when I understood the final truth about humans. You do not just fight to survive. You fight to create a world where fighting is not necessary. You fight so that your children can live in peace. Lisa looked at her notes. 5 days of interviews. 5 days of learning about humanity from an alien perspective. Is that why you agreed to tell this story? Yes, other species need to understand what humans really are. You are not monsters. You are not savages. You are not even warriors, exactly. Zekthara stood up and walked to the window one last time. Humans are survivors. But you survive by helping others survive too. You fight wars to end wars. You show strength to create peace. The alien turned back to face her. I'm not afraid of humans anymore, but I am in awe of them. You have found a way to be gentle and terrible at the same time. Kind and deadly at the same time, peaceful and warlike at the same time. Lisa turned off her recorder. What will you do now? I will go home to my family. I will tell other Krillians what I have told you. I will help make sure we never forget the lessons we learned from fighting humans. Zekthara walked to the door, then stopped and looked back at her. And I will teach my children that the universe is full of different kinds of intelligence. Most species are smart in ways that help them survive. But humans are smart in ways that help everyone survive. The alien opened the door and stepped into the corridor. His last words echoed back to Lisa as he walked away. That is why humans are dangerous. And that is why humans are necessary. The galaxy is a better place because you are in it. Even when you are fighting. Especially when you are fighting. Lisa sat alone in the quiet room, looking at her notes. She had come here to learn about war. Instead, she had learned about peace. About what it really takes to build a universe where different species can live together safely. She had learned the truth about humanity. And now she understood why that truth was both frightening and hopeful at the same time.